Managing and Controlling Ethics Programs. This lecture examines the concept of an ethics audit as a way to help implement an effective ethics program. We begin by discussing the implementations of ethics programs. We define the term ethics audit and explore its relationship to a social audit. Next, we examine the benefits and limitations of this implementation tool. The challenges of measuring non-financial ethical performance are also examined, and evolving standards are reviewed from AA 1000, the Global Reporting Initiative, and the Open Compliance Ethics Group. We then detail a framework for an ethics audit, including securing the commitment of directors and top managers, establishing a committee to oversee the audit, defining the scope of the audit process, reviewing the firm's mission, values, goals, and policies, and defining ethical priorities. This includes collecting and analyzing relevant information, verifying the results, and reporting them. Finally, this lecture considers the strategic importance of ethics auditing. Implementing ethics programs. There are 5 factors that can impact the success of an ethics program. Content of the Code of Ethics. It's important that the code is clear, concise, and with a strong ethical standard. The frequency of communication regarding the ethics program. You can't create an ethics program and forget about it. It must be a part of the organization's language, and it must be communicated often and frequently. The quality of the communication. If you send out a brief email and stop there, what you are saying is your ethics program is not that important. The communication needs to be solid, sound, and strong so that the recipients understand that the program is important. Senior management's ability to incorporate ethics into the organization. This is also key. Senior management must be on board and willing to act ethically themselves and hold their team members accountable for their behavior as well. And finally, local management's ability to do the same. You should expect all of your management team to behave within accordance of the ethics program. The program must be instilled from top to bottom. Implementing ethics programs. In order to implement a successful ethics program, an organization must have ways of managing, evaluating, and controlling business ethics programs. Viewing a business ethics program as a part of strategic planning and management activities is critical to the success of any firm. Shared values among employees are the glue of successful management and control of business ethics programs. And when the business ethics program helps to align and direct activities toward an ethical culture, there will be a commitment to the long-term ethical progress of the firm. Process controls for ethics programs. 3 types of controls are involved with implementing and managing an ethics program. Formal controls for business ethics include output controls that provide the proper tools and resources, for example, proper selection of employees, ethics training, and structural systems, including communication systems. Next, we have process controls, which include management's commitment to the ethics program and the methods or system for evaluation. And the third, output controls, which involve setting standards against actual behavior. One of the most popular methods of evaluating ethical performance is an ethics audit. What is an ethics audit? An ethics audit is a systematic evaluation of an organization's ethics and performance to determine whether it's effective. It includes regular, complete, and documented measurement of compliance, measuring conformity to the firm's desired ethical standards. And it can be a precursor to setting up an ethics program. It identifies the firm's current ethical standards, policies, and risk areas so that an ethics program can effectively address problem areas. It should be the most important part of an ethics program, with the primary purpose being to identify risks and problems in activities and plan steps to adjust, correct, or eliminate the concerns. Let's talk about the social audit. This is the process of evaluating a firm's various operating procedures, code of conduct, and other factors to determine its effect on a society. Goal is to identify what, if any, actions of the firm have impacted the society in some way. A social audit may be initiated by a firm that is seeking to improve its cohesiveness or improve its image within the society. If the results are positive, they may be released to the public. For example, if a factory is believed to have a negative impact, the company may have a social audit conducted to identify actions that actually benefit society. A social audit is the process of assessing and reporting a business's performance in fulfilling the economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropic responsibilities expected of it by its stakeholders. Social reports often discuss issues related to a firm's performance in the 4 dimensions of social responsibility, as well as to specific social responsibility and ethical issues such as staff issues, community economic development, volunteerism, and environmental impact. In contrast, ethics audits focus on more narrow issues related to assessing and reporting on a firm's performance in terms of ethical and legal conduct. An ethics audit can be a component of a social audit. Ethics auditing is similar to financial auditing in that it employs similar procedures and processes to create a system of integrity that includes objective reporting. There are many benefits of an ethics audit. There are many reasons why companies choose to understand, report on, and improve their ethical conduct. One reason is to detect ethical misconduct before it becomes a major problem, to be proactive. Accounting scandals and legal and ethical transgressions have encouraged companies to better account for their actions on a wide range of areas, including corporate government, ethics programs, customer relationships, employee relations, environmental policies, and community involvement. Measuring the ethical work climate is one way to learn about the ethical culture of an organization. The auditing process can highlight trends, improve organizational learning, and facilitate communication and working relationships. One of the greatest benefits of the auditing process is improved relationships with all of their stakeholders. Ethical crisis management and recovery. Just as companies develop crisis management plans to prepare to or respond to and recover from natural disasters, they should also prepare for ethical disasters, which can result in substantial legal and financial costs, disrupt operations, reduce productivity, destroy organizational reputation, and erode stakeholder confidence. Ethical crisis management involves contingency planning, assessing organizational risks, planning for potential occurrences, and providing the tools to respond. Stages of an ethical disaster. Despite the high cost of misconduct, United States companies are failing to identify and manage ethical, social, economic, and environmental concerns. Ethical disasters follow recognizable phases of escalation, from ethical issue recognition and the decision to act unethically to the organization's discovery of and response to the particular act. Anticipation of and intervention during these situations can stave off an organizational disaster. Contingency planning assesses risk, it plans for these potential occurrences, and provides ready tools for responding to ethical crises. The process of ethical disaster recovery planning involves assessing the organization's values, developing an ethics program, performing an ethics audit, and developing contingency plans for potential ethical disasters. How do we improve the organizational risk management? Begin with create a regulatory reform project management office with the appropriate governance to direct business and operating models and manage risks proportionately. Have a risk management team. Chief risk officers should report to group CROs or the board members. You'll want to involve risk and compliance at the beginning of the product development cycle. Improve independent controls by setting appropriate governance frameworks with which portfolio managers need to comply and then manage and optimize the use of capital. Measuring non-financial ethical performance. Although much of the regulatory focus of corporate ethics and compliance is driven by financial measures, the integrity of an organization also has to focus on non-financial areas of performance, as non-financial performance measures, these are crucial to a firm's health and longevity. When we talk about the return on integrity, the word integrity implies a balanced organization that not only makes the ethical financial decisions, but also is ethical in the more subjective aspects of its corporate culture. Many organizations and regulatory frameworks offer a means of capturing ethical performance. This includes both structural and behavioral. The SOX Act has focused on questionable accounting and metrics that destroy shareholder value. On the other hand, we also have other models that exist. We have the Six Sigma, the balanced scorecard, and the triple bottom line. And these are all used to capture structural and behavioral organizational ethical performance. Beginning with the balanced scorecard, this tool was developed by Drs. Kaplan and Norton, and the balanced scorecard basically incorporates non-financial performance indicators into the evaluation system to provide a more balanced, thus the word balanced scorecard, name of this tool. But it provides a more balanced view of organizational performance. The system uses 4 metrics: financial, internal business processes, learning and growth, and customer. And all of these are pulled together to measure the overall performance of the firm. Next, we have the Six Sigma tool, and the Six Sigma focuses on improving existing processes that do not meet quality specifications or that need to be improved, as well as developing new processes that meet the Six Sigma standards. And to meet the Six Sigma specifications, the process must not produce more than 3.4 defects per million opportunities. And then the last one here, the triple bottom line, and this is an approach that is used to measure social, financial, and environmental factors, or basically people, places, and planet. And it recognizes that business has a responsibility to positively influence a variety of stakeholders. And this would include your customers, employees, your shareholders, your community, and the natural environment. And the challenge now is how to evaluate a business's social and environmental impact, since there are no universally standard forms of measuring these criteria. Continuing on with measuring the non-financial ethical performance, the purpose of non-financial measures is to determine the wholeness and soundness of the many aspects of a business that enhance ethics and profits without increasing its risk. Now, once again, we have the Six Sigma, the balanced scorecard, and triple bottom line, which we just covered. But we also have the Global Reporting Initiative, also known as GRI, which advances sustainability reporting. This has become a very prominent framework that companies have adopted to report their social and sustainability progress. Businesses can use the GRI to come up with a more standardized method of reporting non-financial results in a way that users of the reports can understand. And companies benefit because the GRI provides tools for improving their implementation of the triple bottom line, the disclosure of their progress in this area, the ability to compare their sustainability efforts to those of other companies, and the chance to enhance the reputation in the eye of the stakeholders. Users also benefit because this standardized sustainability report provides them with a benchmark to compare company sustainability initiatives. Accountability. This is an international membership organization committed to enhancing the performance of organizations and to developing the competencies of individuals in social and ethical accountability and sustainability development. The AA 1000 process standards link the definition of embedding of an organization's values to the development of performance targets and to the assessment and communication of organizational performance. AA 1000 basically ties social and ethical issues into the organization's strategic management and operations. And our last on our list here on the slide, Open Compliance Ethics Group created a universal framework for compliance and ethics management. They focus on the non-financial compliance and qualitative elements of internal controls, guidelines that companies can utilize as they see fit, and it offers tools and certification procedures. There are risks associated in ethics auditing. Although ethics audits provide many benefits for individual companies and their stakeholders, they do have the potential to create risks. A firm may uncover a serious ethical problem that it would prefer not to disclose until it can remedy the situation. It may find that one or more of its stakeholders' criticisms cannot be dismissed or easily addressed. And the process of conducting an ethics audit may foster stakeholder dissatisfaction. The auditing process imposes burdens, especially with regard to record keeping, and costs for firms that undertake it. It's an expensive, lengthy process. And the process of auditing and reporting a firm's ethics programs is no guarantee that it will avoid challenges related to its efforts. And because this type of auditing is relatively new, there are a few common standards to judge disclosure and effectiveness or to make comparisons. Being viewed by the public as needing an audit can motivate companies to conduct one in order to signal their intention to respond to concerns. And although ethics and social responsibility are defined and perceived differently by various stakeholders, a core of minimum standards for ethical performance is evolving. Specific, measurable, achievable, and meaningful measurements in terms of business impact on communities, employees, consumers, the environment, and economic systems. The FSGO's 7 steps for effective ethical compliance, the SOX Act, and the Dodd-Frank Act all provide standards that organizations can use in ethics auditing. Framework for an ethics audit. The auditing process. Now to begin, there are questions that need to be addressed during the audit. For example, how broad the audit should be, how big should it be, what should it include, what standards of performance should be applied, how often the audit should be conducted, whether and how the audit's results should be reported to stakeholders, and what action should be taken in response to the audit results. An ethics audit should be unique to each company, reflecting its size, industry, corporate culture, and identified risks, well as the regulatory environment in which it operates. And the framework in this course encompasses a wide range of business responsibilities and relationships. There are no generic approaches that will satisfy every firm's circumstance. The steps that provide the framework for an ethics audit include what we see here on the screen, starting with secure the commitment of top managers and the board of directors. Once again, it's that tone at the top. You have to start from the top and get their commitment before you begin this process. Without the commitment of top management and the board of directors, you will not have that flow that flows from the top throughout the organization. So we start there. And then establish a committee to oversee the ethics audit. You have to put together a team of individuals to oversee the process, and it has to be a team that's committed to doing this. Next, define the scope of the audit process, including subject matter areas important to the ethics audit. You have to narrow it down. I mean, you can't just put a team together and say, boom, go do an ethics audit. You have to provide some guidelines and the scope. Okay, we would like you to look into this particular area. We would like you to look into our accounting procedures. You have to give them some guidelines. And then review the organization's mission, policies, goals, and objectives, and define its ethical priorities. Next, you jump right in. Collect and analyze the relevant information in each designated subject area matter. So, for example, going back up to bullet point number 3, defining the scope of the audit process. Once you've prioritized what areas you want to dig into, then you get out there and you collect and analyze the information that's appropriate for each task. And then you'll want to have the results verified by an independent agent. Once again, it's important that in any type of audit, whether it's an ethics audit, whether it's your financial audit, whatever that audit may be, it's highly recommended that you outsource that or have an independent agent do that. For example, it is the law in accounting that you have an accountant outside of the organization. They have to verify the results of your financials. It's the law. And they have to sign off on them. And a senior team has to sign off on them. So it's important to have an independent agent so you'll get unbiased results. And then finally, report the findings to the audit committee and, if approved, to the managers and the stakeholders. So once you've done your audit and have gathered and collected and analyzed all of the information, you've had it verified by an independent agent, then you report the findings to the audit committee, and then at that point make the decision if the information will be passed along to the managers and or the stakeholders. So what I'd like to do now is just take a few minutes to talk a little bit about each of these steps and why they're important. So first and foremost, once again, you want to secure the commitment of top managers and the board of directors. So the first step in conducting the audit is to secure the commitment of the firm's top management and, if it's a public corporation, its board of directors. The pressure for an ethics audit may come from the board of directors in response to stakeholder concerns or legally mandated corporate governance reforms related to the SOX Act, which suggests that board of directors should provide oversight for all auditing activities. Court decisions related to the FSGO hold board members responsible for the ethical and legal compliance programs of the firms they oversee. And pressure for an audit may come from top managers looking for ways to track and improve ethical performance and to give their firm an advantage over competitors that are facing questions about their ethical conduct. CEOs and CFOs may face prosecution if they knowingly certify misleading financial statements. And some companies have established an ethics officer in conjunction with an ethics program, and the ethics officer may campaign for an ethics audit as a way to measure the effectiveness of the firm's ethics programs. And regardless of where the impetus for an audit comes from, its success hugely hinges on the support of top management. This organizational chart shows us a typical model corporate social responsibility structure, what it looks like. And now not every organization is exactly alike. This is a typical structure. So as you'll see here, you have the board of directors at the top, and below that the chief executive officer, and then below that you have your CFO, your COO, your human resources department, and then your legal counsel. And then below that, this chart shows Sustainability Council and Community Affairs Council, and that's where you'll see some differentiations there in the different organizations. But what I want to point out here is that right next to the board of directors is the Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer. And this is standard. It's standard that the Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer typically reports directly to the board of directors. If the Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer reported to the Chief Executive Officer, then that might be considered a conflict of interest. Or, your stakeholders might say, well, how do we know the CEO is not putting pressure on the ethics and compliance officer to provide certain results, okay? The way it's typical to structure in an ethics model to have the ethics and compliance officer reporting to the board of directors, so it takes that out of the equation, so that there's no way that the stakeholders can come back and say, oh, well, your senior team was putting pressure on the ethics and compliance officer. This takes that out of the equation. So that's why you'll see that this is a pretty typical structure. Okay, the next step, after you've secured your senior management, you've got your board of directors on board, everyone wants an ethics program. So the next step is to establish a committee or a team to oversee the audit process. And ideally, the board of directors' financial audit committee should oversee the ethics audit. In most firms, managers or ethics officers conduct social and ethics auditing. This team should include members who are knowledgeable about the nature and role of ethics audits and come from various departments within the firm. Outside consultants may be hired to coordinate the audit and report the results directly to the board of directors. An external auditor should not have other consulting or conflict of interest relationships with top managers or board members. This is very important. The external auditor needs to be completely external, with no other relationship with the organization that might be deemed as a conflict of interest by any of the stakeholders. Next, we want to define the scope of the audit. The Ethics Audit Committee should establish the scope of the audit and monitor its progress to ensure that it stays on track. And the scope depends on the type of business, the risks faced by the firm, and available opportunities to manage ethics. This step includes defining a key subject matter or risk areas that are important to the ethics audit, as well as the basis on which they should be assessed. Our next step, review the organizational mission, values, goals, policies, and define ethical priorities. The audit process should include a review of the current mission statement and strategic objectives. The company's overall mission may incorporate ethics objectives, but these may also be found in separate documents, including those that focus on social responsibility. This step should examine all formal documents that make explicit commitments with regard to ethical, legal, or social responsibility, as well as less formal documents, including marketing materials, workplace policies, and ethic policies and standards for suppliers and vendors. It is important to examine all of the firm's policies and practices for the specific areas covered by the audit. You should look at how managers are rewarded for meeting their goals and the systems available for employees to give and receive feedback. An effective ethics audit should review all systems and assess their strengths and weaknesses. And concurrent with this step in the auditing process, the firm should define its ethical priorities. Because there may be no legal requirements for ethical priorities, it is up to management's strategic planning processes to determine appropriate standards, principles, duties, and required action to deal with ethics issues. Our next step, collect and analyze relevant information. So our next step is to identify the tools or methods for measuring the firm's progress in improving employees' ethical decisions and conduct. The firm should collect relevant information for each designated subject matter area. A thorough audit will include a review of all relevant reports, including external documents sent to government agencies and other parties. The information collected will help determine baseline levels of compliance as well as the internal and external expectations of the company. This step identifies where the company has met its commitments. Some techniques for collecting evidence might involve examining both internal and external documents, observing the data collection process, such as by consulting with stakeholders, and confirming information in the organization's accounting records. Auditors may also employ ratio analysis of relevant indicators to identify any inconsistencies or unexpected patterns. Because stakeholder integration is so crucial to the ethics audit, a company's stakeholders need to be defined and interviewed during the data collection stage. Understanding employee issues is vital to a successful audit. Customers are a primary stakeholder group because their patronage and loyalty determines the company's financial success. Providing meaningful feedback is critical for creating and maintaining customer satisfaction. Some investors seek to include in their investment portfolios the stocks of companies that conduct ethics and social audits. They are becoming more aware of the financial benefits that can stem from socially responsible management systems. Organizations can obtain feedback from stakeholders through standardized surveys, interviews, and focus groups. Companies can also encourage stakeholder exchanges by inviting specific groups together for discussions. The primary objective is to generate a variety of opinions about how the company is perceived and whether it is fulfilling stakeholders' expectations. Once these data have been collected, the firm should then compare its internal perceptions to those discovered during the stakeholder assessment stage, and then summarize findings and draw preliminary conclusions. It may involve descriptive assessments of the findings, basically the costs and benefits of the company's ethics program, the strengths and weaknesses of the firm's policies and practices, feedback from stakeholders and issues that should be addressed in future audits. It may also be appropriate to weigh the findings against standards identified earlier, and this would be both quantitatively and qualitatively. Data analysis should also include an examination of how other organizations in the industry are performing in the designated subject matter areas. Verify the results. The next step is to have an independent party, social and/or ethics audit consultant. It could be a financial accounting firm that offers social auditing services, or a nonprofit special interest group with auditing experience. But you'll find someone outside the firm to verify the results of the data analysis. Verification is an independent assessment of the quality, accuracy, and completeness of a company's social report. Independent verification offers a measure of assurance that the company has reported its audit fairly and honestly, as well as providing an assessment of its social and environmental reporting systems. Verification by an independent party gives the stakeholders confidence in the company's ethics or social audit and lends the audit report credibility and objectivity. An increasing number of companies are opting for independent verification of ethics audits. The process of verifying the results of an audit should involve standard procedures that control the reliability and the validity of the information. Auditors can apply substantive tests to detect material misstatements in the audit data and the analysis. And a financial auditor may be asked to provide a letter to the company's board of directors and senior managers that highlights any inconsistencies in the reporting process. Report the findings. The final step is to issue the ethics audit report. Reporting the audit findings to the relevant internal parties and, if approved, to the external stakeholders in a formal report. The report should spell out the purpose and scope of the audit, the methods used in the audit process, how they gathered the evidence and valuation. Should also identify the role of the auditor, once again, preferably independent, and any auditing guidelines followed by the auditor, and any reporting guidelines followed by the company. Although the ethics audit may be similar to a financial audit, their forms are quite different. In a financial audit, the statement of auditing standards dictates the content and placement of every word of a financial audit report. And the report issued can be an unqualified opinion, a qualified opinion, an adverse opinion, or a disclaimer of opinion. The strategic importance of ethics auditing. Although the concept of auditing implies an official examination of ethical performance, many organizations audit their performance informally. Any attempt to verify outcomes and to compare them with standards can be considered an auditing activity. Organizations, such as the Better Business Bureau, provide awards and assessment tools to help any organization evaluate their ethical performance. Companies with fewer resources may wish to use the judging criteria from the Better Business Bureau's Torch Award criteria for ethical companies as benchmarks for their informal self-audits. The ethics audit should be conducted regularly rather than in response to problems or questions about a firm's priorities and conduct. An audit may be comprehensive and encompass all of the ethics and social responsibility areas of a business, or it can focus on one or two specific areas. Ethics audits can present several problems. They can be expensive and time-consuming. Selecting the auditors may be difficult if objective, qualified personnel are not available. And employees sometimes fear comprehensive evaluations, and in such cases, ethics audits can be disruptive. Auditing ethical performance can also generate many benefits. Provides an assessment of a company's ethical performance as compared to its core values, ethics policy, internal operating practices, management systems, and the expectations of its key stakeholders. And the assessment can be used to reallocate resources and activities as well as focus on new opportunities. The process can also help companies fulfill their mission statements in ways that boost profits and reduce risks. It can pinpoint areas where improving operating practices can improve both bottom line profits and stakeholder relationships. And it can just demonstrate the positive impact of ethical conduct and social responsibility initiatives on the firm's bottom line, convincing managers and other primary stakeholders of the value of more ethical and socially responsible business practices.